Well, you're quite right. Liverpool's very famous for lots of things. One is the football. It has two fabulous teams, Liverpool and Everton. Of course, Liverpool supporter.
Uh-huh.
Um, Also, it's famous for its music, not just the Beatles, who are the most famous pop group in the world, I guess.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to English with Lewis. And it is my pleasure to be back here once again with a wonderful guest. We've just been having a little bit of a chit chat. We've been nattering on, getting to know each other, breaking the ice, and I've just pressed record. So let's crack on. Let's kick off. And Steve, welcome. How are you?
I'm absolutely smashing, thanks, Lewis. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm going to blush with all of this. And you said you were smashing, which is a lovely, informal British way of saying that you're great, you're awesome, incredible. But do us all a favor, and could you introduce yourself for those of the audience that haven't seen you before?
Sure, I'm Steve Mack. I teach people how to speak English. That's British English online. I do private lessons as well as doing, I have a YouTube channel, Learn English, Sound British. That's all there is about me, really. I'm a huge fan of Liverpool Football Club. I I play the guitar. I used to be a professional photographer for a short while, but these days it's 100% concentrating on teaching English.
Well, there are so many different topics that we can get into, but let's start off with the city where you're from, Liverpool, because myself, I lived in Liverpool for 3 years. When I was like 18, I was knowing that I was going to go to uni. I'm from a town near Leeds, hence Ellen Road here. And I was
Bradford?
thinking,
You're
yeah,
from
yeah,
Bradford?
I'm technically from Bradford, but I usually say Leeds. But I was thinking, like, shall I go to uni in Leeds, in Newcastle, in Manchester? And I had mates going to all of these unis. And I was like, oh, nobody's really going to Liverpool. And Liverpool's beautiful. It's got a nice vibe about it. So I spent 3 amazing years there. And that's where I met my current girlfriend, who I've been with for 10 years. So
Is she a
Liverpool will always...
scouser?
She's not. She's Spanish. So
Uh,
she was there doing her Erasmus. But it'll always have a special place in my heart. But tell us about Liverpool. What's it like for people who haven't visited or have only heard of like the football club or the Beatles?
well, you're quite right. Liverpool's very famous for lots of things. One is the football. It has two fabulous teams, Liverpool and Everton. Of course, Liverpool supporter.
Uh-huh.
Um, Also, it's famous for its music, not just the Beatles, who are the most famous pop group in the world, I guess. Um, it's a musical city, but it's got lots of firsts as well. Do you know, I think it had the world's first public lending library in Liverpool, had the first school of tropical medicine in Liverpool, first centre to teach dogs to guide blind people in Liverpool. And also now, lots of Hollywood movies. For example, the last Batman movie was filmed there.
I mean, there's a lot going for Liverpool. Like, I remember when I was picking my uni, I remember walking around and being like, oh, this has got really like nice old Victorian buildings, which is, I guess, why they have chosen Liverpool as kind of a set for many Hollywood films. But yeah, there's lots of things going on. And starting with football, Liverpool and Everton. Is it a friendly rivalry?
Absolutely. It's not like other cities that have two teams within the city. When they play, it's called a derby match. So if two local sides play each other, it's called a derby match. And in a lot of cities, there's a fierce rivalry. Whereas in Liverpool, yes, there's a friendly rivalry, but it's not that uncommon for two brothers want to be a Liverpool supporter and want to be an Everton supporter. It's all done. It's all done in a friendly way. Lots of banter.
Perfect. I love the word banter. I explained it a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of like laughing, joking, having a laugh. And it's banter or bants, which is a nice
Yeah, I
way
never
of
use
shortening it.
bants. I never use bants, but yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So it's a friendly city. At least when I was there, I noticed that everybody was really friendly. But for foreigners, people who don't have English as a first language, it's a tricky place to go and adapt to because of the Scouse accent, the Liverpudlian accent. So
I don't
yours,
know what you mean, Lewis.
yours
A
is pretty
Liverpool
neutral.
accent?
Like it's like mate. Everything is kind of like from the back of your mouth or your throat. Like, how would you explain a Scouse accent to our viewers? Because it's tricky and yours is very neutral.
I don't really know what you're talking about, Lewis.
Like,
I mean,
should we get
a
some
Scouse
chicken?
accent from me. You know,
You can see the twang.
it's a combination of things. Liverpool at one time was the busiest port in the world in the 1800s, and lots of sailors, lots of visitors came through the port of Liverpool, and lots of them stayed. For example, lots of Chinese people came. We've got one of the oldest Chinatowns outside of China. And so all those people came together and gave us parts of their accent. For example, the word Scouse that you use to describe the accent is also used to describe people from Liverpool. We're known as Scousers. And it's also a type of stew. And that came from Norwegians who arrived as sailors. So it's a combination of things. It's a little bit nasally. Some people speak with a nasally tone, but you're quite right. The hard K, the glottal sounds that come from the back of the throat in words, you use the perfect example, chicken. So normally you would pronounce it chicken, but it comes from the back and it's chicken.
It's great. And I didn't know that Scouse, the word Scouse, came from Norway. Like, that's new to me 100%. I know that Liverpool has always been a bit of a melting pot because of the big port. And there's a lot of Irish people who moved to Liverpool, I don't know, decades and centuries ago.
Absolutely.
Which is perhaps one of the reasons why the accent is so, let's say, different to other accents in the rest of, not the United Kingdom, but the rest of England.
Also the vocabulary. So it's not just the accent. There's also the vocabulary that goes with it. Words like boss, meaning good. Words like bevy, meaning an alcoholic drink. So I could say to you, do you fancy going for a bevy? And you go, oh, that'd be boss. It's things like that. It's substitutions of sounds, CH sounds, sometimes replaced with a D. So this becomes this, that becomes that, and other becomes other. So it's not this, that, and the other. It's this, that, and the other.
Thanks. Now, I love the Scouse accent. Like, I like all accents in general, whether it's in English or in other languages that I speak. And it's nice to kind of like tune in and be like, oh, I wonder where that person is from. Or if you're watching a TV show, like, for example, First Dates or something like that. And like, what accent's that? Are they Geordies? Are they from Newcastle? Or are they Brummies? Are they from Birmingham? Oh, no, he's a Scouser. He's from Liverpool.
I've got a little bit of an issue that people who are learning English as a second language, they seem to have RP, received pronunciation, foisted upon them. So it seems to be forced on them. Even if their own English teachers in school, for example, it's a second language to them as well. And of course, popular shows, which are great, like The Crown and type of Downton Abbey, they promote this accent where everything is pronounced really clearly, so it's quite easy to understand. Hello, how are you today? The problem is then these students come to the UK, less than 2% of the people actually speak with a received pronunciation accent. So then they hear Geordie, Birmingham accent, Cockney, and suddenly it's like a different language to them.
No, it's true. Like even when I'm making videos, I'll often say in British English, and like we're all guilty of doing this. When
Yes.
British English, there are so many different types of accents and ways of speaking in Great Britain and the United Kingdom. But I mean, it's kind of a way of classifying things, despite the fact that there are so many little subtleties and differences between people from different cities in England, even. And for me, I would say the hardest accent to understand for non-native people would be a really kind of rough Scottish accent,
Glasgow.
where I'm like, it's beautiful, it's very musical. But if you go to Glasgow, for example, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
In Liverpool, it's tough, but Glasgow is the next level.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Florence Birmingham. Again. Yeah, I struggle when I go up there.
There
Northern
we go.
Irish, for me, my dad is Northern Irish,
Okay.
and that accent is so difficult.
Like, it's beautiful. All of these accents, I think, are beautiful to compare and contrast and see if you're able to understand them. But one more thing about Liverpool. A lot of Scousers, Liverpudlians, will say first that they are Scousers and then maybe they are English. So there's a little bit of a kind of independent feeling in the region. Would you agree with that?
That's very, very true. I've heard different stories of where this comes from. But certainly there was a big strike. People who were in employment in the 1920s, so around 100 years ago, they all decided their paying conditions were really bad. So across the UK, there was a general strike, and everyone put their tools down and said, we're not working until we get better conditions. And slowly but surely, other cities came back online, and the workers went back, and they received some recompense, some benefits. The Liverpudlians held out, and it got to the stage where even the police in Liverpool went on strike, and the government of the time sent in armed forces and other police forces into Liverpool to arrest strikers. And since then, that's just stayed in people's memory, and they've thought, well, we're Liverpool first, we're the UK later.
Oh, it's interesting. It's interesting. And I heard different things about Margaret Thatcher, that obviously she's absolutely idolized in Liverpool.
Oh, yes, I've got a picture of her on the wall behind.
Wink, wink. Just to be clear, that's irony. That's sarcasm.
Yes. Yeah, we're a long way from London. I think I thought Leeds is a far way from London as well.
No, 100%. Like a lot of the time when I was at uni in Liverpool, I often found that I had kind of more in common with people from Ireland or Scotland or other parts in the north of England, rather than people in like the south of England around London. Because I think, I don't know, the way you grow up and the values that you are taught, generally speaking, of course, are more similar in the north and other kind of nations of the United Kingdom, rather than in the rich, important capital in London. But, you know, that's my thoughts.
Because you speak to so many people around the world, as I do, do you find it disappointing when they say, oh, I'm coming to the UK, and invariably what they mean is they're coming to London, and for a week they won't ever leave London, but they've been to England so much more than that. Go to the beautiful country of Wales, go up to Geordie land, see a bit of life. Now, we'll go to London, which of course you have to do. But you must feel that as well. Leeds is beautiful. All the countryside around there. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this gets on my nerves slightly, but the more infuriating thing is if people say like, "Oh, I'm going to London. What do you recommend? What should I do?" And I'm like, "Well, I've only actually been to London a couple of times. You know, I'm not actually from London." And a lot of Americans are guilty of doing this as well, where they'll say like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to London," and like just associate the United Kingdom as just being London, and that's it.
Yeah. I'd spend a lot of time in America, and I get that all the time. That quite often it's, do you know the royal family? And I've had the privilege of meeting a few members of the royal family in my time. So I have to say, yes, I have. But when someone from Texas says, "Oh, I met someone from London once called Dave. Do you know Dave?"
Ah, okay, Dave, right?
Dave, yeah, I know Dave.
We go way back. Awesome. Now, you said you've met the royal family. Tell us about that. Who have you met, and how did it come about?
Um, the I used to work for the government, and I moved down to London for a year. And in the course of my work, I met a few royals. I've met the current king briefly. I think he said, "Get out the way." I met Prince Andrew and his wife, Princess Anne. Met a few. Only to say hello, do the little bow, that type of thing. We're not on first name terms.
Excellent. So let's get more into your job before you started teaching English and posting content on YouTube. Like, what was this job working for the government? In what capacity were you working for the government?
Oh, I just used to solve problems for them, really.
Sounds like you were some kind of spy. Were you
Yeah,
working for
that's right.
MI5?
I am James Bond. Now I'll have to come through and find you and deal with you.
The name's Matt. Steve.
Absolutely not. But I was, in the end, I ended up as an administrator. I just sat in an office and shuffled papers.
Sounds fun. Was it?
It allowed me to retire really early. So yes, it was fun on the last day when I said bye.
It was worth it in the end, right?
It allows me to do this. It means I don't have to rely on working for money now, so that I can. Anyone that goes to my YouTube channel knows, everything's free.
Excellent. Now, you have a few different passions. You also mentioned that you are a photographer, which is funny again, because my dad is a photographer and he actually just retired this year. He spent 30 years working for the Yorkshire Post, which is the regional newspaper based in Leeds, but he covered lots of like sports matches and events around Yorkshire. So Bradford, Leeds, Huddersfield, Sheffield, Hull, York, all of these places. And now, knowing what I know now, being 32 years old, I look at my dad's job and I think, it's great. I should have got into that sooner because he spends so much time going to like big sporting events. But when I was growing up, the idea of like cameras, it wasn't really for me. So, in your case, like with photography, how did you get into it and what type of photography did you do?
2 weeks before I retired, I was very aware that I needed to do something. I was still a young man. And so I was sat in the office with a colleague and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I knew I was going to travel and was fortunate to be able to travel. And they said, you need to take up photography. And the only photographs I'd ever taken was on holiday. I'm old enough to remember film cameras, before digital. And so I literally gave him a piece of paper and said, write down what you think I should get. So he wrote all this down. I went into the local camera shop and said, here's a list. I want this camera, this equipment.
Okay.
And I spent a week learning it. And then I became a freelance photographer, ended up taking photographs at Anfield, which is Liverpool football ground.
I mean, that sounds like you were pretty lucky, because Anfield, in my mind, if you were taking photos, would be like the end goal, like the final objective.
I would have paid them. I would have paid them to get.
Like, how did this happen? Did you send them an email? Did you reach out to them? Or do you have some contacts?
It was hard graft. There's a nice expression for you to explain.
Hard work. So
it was hard work.
Be a noun and a verb. And if you're grafting, it means you're working. And hard graft is hard work. And usually it's more associated with more physical jobs. So my cousin who works as a plasterer, or if you're a joiner, or if you're a builder, it's more common to use the word graft rather than work, which is the generic term. So yeah, it's hard graft.
Nicely explained. I just thought, once I'd learned how to take photographs, I went through the usual route of portraits, weddings, that type of thing. And I decided that I quite like doing weddings, but only really expensive ones for rich people, because one, they would pay me lots of money, and two, I got to go to the greatest parties in the world. You know, I was taking photographs in weddings and, in castles and places like that. It was amazing. And it was through the contacts, really, of these powerful people that my names were put forward to things. And in the end, I could almost select the jobs that I took on. Your dad worked for the Post. I worked part-time for a magazine, Cheshire Life. So that went on for about 3 years. I would suggest I did that for about 3 years. And then you talk about graft being hard work. I found it very difficult. If you ask your dad, I'm sure he'll say there was lots of times when he was sat in the rain, in the cold, taking pictures where his fingers could barely click the shutter. So I found it a little bit tough at the end. So after 3 or 4 years, I wound that down. And now, other than the camera you see me talking on, I don't own a camera.
Hey, wow. So it was a period of time, 3 or 4 years. You said you wound it down, which is like gradually stopping doing something. So It's not like from one day to the next, like, okay, I quit, that's it. But you just kind of, I guess, fell out of love with it and decided to pack it in almost and move on to the next thing.
Pack it in's a great expression. Yeah. I decided to call it a day. Bring the curtain down on my photography career. I still have a photo library that I used to put photographs on that are used in advertisements all over the world. And occasionally I'll get a payment from them. So I'll use a photograph I took of a parrot in California to advertise something. So I get a small amount of money for that. But other than that, as I say, I don't even own a camera now.
Fact. So yeah, you've gone full circle. And speaking about traveling, you mentioned that you had been in the US. What kind of travel destinations have you enjoyed visiting the most? And I know it's putting you on the spot a little bit, off the top of your head, picking one. But yeah, what would you say if you had to go back to any of these destinations that you visited? Where would you go?
I'm twice your age. And when I was younger, this is the days when lots of people didn't even have televisions. Yeah, we were lucky we had a television. But there was only 3 channels. And so you were limited in choice as to what you could actually watch as a young child. And my favorite, just like everyone else's favorite, was Westerns, cowboys. And there was series, there was movies, and I loved them. I wanted to be a cowboy. So as soon as I could, I got on a plane and I went to Arizona. And I wanted to go to a place called Tombstone because I'd seen it when
Sounds
I was
very
a
inviting.
child. Yoke Corral and Wyatt Earp and that type of thing. I wanted to go and see it. So I drove the length of Arizona. I stopped at a ranch and rode a horse for the first time. The horse got frightened by a rattlesnake and ran away with me on. So I had lots of adventures. But Tombstone, such a beautiful little town. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a long way from anywhere else. So of all the places in America, I've been to lots and lots of states. I would suggest that's where I could live. I would happily live in Tombstone, Arizona.
Okay. Like the name is so strange. It sounds like it's from like a scary movie or something like that. Because a tombstone is like when you go to a cemetery and then you have the place where somebody is laying, resting, buried under the ground. You have a tombstone. So it's not really very inviting for people as a tourist, unless you're into that kind of stuff.
It was apparently someone arrived there and said, because it's in the middle of the desert, really, and they said the only good thing about this place is the cemetery, and it has a famous cemetery called Boot Hill Cemetery, and so this is the tombstone of America, if you like. But it's lovely, such a friendly little town.
Right. And with this, like, did it live up to expectations? Like the whole kind of nature and what you see, was it as you expected it to be from the Westerns that you saw?
Oh, it was better. It was better. But some parts of America, no, this sounds terrible. I once spent a day driving from Las Vegas to the Grand Canyon, which, as you know, is one of the natural wonders of the world. I got out of the car, I walked to the edge, thought this is a big hole, got back in my car and drove away again. Not impressed at all. And people say it's life-changing. I didn't see it. But then you go to places like the Alamo, which is a famous fort where the Americans fought the Mexicans, and it's very touching. It's very moving. You know, you climb to the top of the Empire State Building, skyscraper in New York, and that's very impressive. But
it's not Tombstone,
not
Arizona.
So
It's funny, just an expression that came to mind. Obviously, you went to these places, the Grand Canyon, and it was like, meh, it's all right, nothing special. And I was going to say it was nothing to write home about.
Perfect.
Which comes from if you go on a trip and you send like postcards, for example, then if it's nothing special, nothing remarkable, it is nothing to write home about. So for you, meh, it was all right. It was nothing to write home about.
Well, that's probably just me. It really is, because everyone else says it's the most amazing thing in the world. I didn't see it. Same when I was in Los Angeles. I went to Hollywood because I wanted to see Hollywood. I was really disappointed. You know, I did the movie stars trip where you go in an open top bus around and see where all these very famous people live, and I'm impressed.
I mean, I don't think I'd be that keen on it either. Like, I spent a little bit of time in the US, and it was actually just after I graduated at university. I'm a big football fan as well. So I went to the US with a company called Challenger Sports, and basically they organize summer camps for soccer. And then they send loads of like British people or Irish people to these camps. And then I stayed with different American families every week, and they rented me a car. So I was driving from like a town in Florida to a town in Alabama. And then the next week I was going to Georgia. From there, I was going to South Carolina. But you are kind of divided into different regions. So I was assigned like the deep south. And I remember it being a bit of a culture shock. Like, of course, we share a language, but a lot of other things are very, very different. And the way of life is different. People are very, very friendly in the south. But I do remember thinking like, where am I? What on earth is going on? But it was great. I'd never been to California, New York, nowhere like this.
I'll tell you a quick story about me in Georgia. The first time I ever went to Georgia, and it is a culture shock. There's no doubt about it. I was hungry and I stopped in a small little town. It maybe had 3 shops. We'd literally call it a one-horse town. Yeah, there was nothing there at all except a cafe. So I went into the cafe and I ordered a sandwich. And a lovely young waitress went away and she came back and she said, I can't do a Georgian accent, but she said, excuse me, are you German? So I said, no, I'm not German. And she turned around and she shouted to her friend who was working in the kitchen, I told you he was French.
Really?
They'd never been out. We got chatting to them and she'd never been outside of her town, ever. She lived in the town. She was in her 20s. She'd never even gone to the next town. She had no idea what was outside of Georgia, no real idea of what was outside of America. Just, but lovely people, but a real culture shock.
Yeah. I mean, the distances are enormous as well. Like,
yeah.
I had to drive maybe 8-10 hours to go from the, I don't know, South Carolina to the south of Georgia. And I remember just being like, the nature is beautiful, but everywhere is so far away that you have to depend on cars all of the time, even if you live in a city, because it's kind of everywhere is built for cars.
And the weather is so extreme. We in England, we're used to it's pretty mild all year round. You know, we don't really get extremes of temperature. But a few years ago, there was something called the Beast from the East in America, where this big icy storm rolled in to the East Coast. And as I was driving I was going to West Virginia. As I was driving into West Virginia, people were being evacuated out. And I'm the only one on this side of the road, and there's queues of cars being evacuated out. But I was singing in a bar that night. So I was halfway up a mountain. I was halfway up a mountain in Charleston, West Virginia, and singing Beatles songs to about 6 people who lived in the mountains.
I mean, when in Rome, you know, being in West Virginia, you should be singing the song, Take Me Home, Country Roads.
Yeah, no.
So, music. What is your kind of history with music? You mentioned that you used to play in a jazz band or something like that. Tell us about it.
Not a jazz band.
Oh, sorry.
When I was younger, I'd like teenager, I went to Spain on holiday and bought a cheap Spanish guitar because I wanted to be a pop star. Brought it home, sort of learnt myself a few chords. I could play simple songs, but that was it. But then when I left to go to college, although the government would pay for my tuition, they wouldn't pay for my living expenses. So lots of people who I went to college with, I'm confident the same as you would find part-time jobs, working in a bar, working as a waiter, something like that. And I thought, I'll busk. That's what you to explain.
Yeah. So to busk is basically to play music in the street and ask for some money. I actually made a short video about it a couple of months ago because I went to Antwerp with my parents and we walked past a busker, and I'm always looking for inspiration when it comes to making videos and teaching things that I don't think many people know. So I remember walking past a busker a guy who is a musician in the street busking. I was like, he's a busker. So yeah, you were a busker. You were busking.
So if I wasn't at college, I would be on the street. As long as the weather was nice, I was out there singing my heart out. I'd put a little cap down, a little hat. People would kindly throw money in sometimes.
Yeah.
And that paid for my living expenses to go to college.
Hey, I mean, you must have been good then.
No, I was just loud.
Like, did you ever play in any concerts or anything? Or did you play in like bars, pubs, stuff like that?
Yeah, I've played in lots of bars and hotel lobbies, places like that. Um, I think I've done a few charity events that have had quite famous people on the bill, people off the telly, off the television, and but never as the star. I was always just the supporting act. Here's Steve to sing a few songs to get us all warmed up before the actual stars came out.
And what is your type of music then? I made a little mistake with jazz. I messed up. So what kind of music do you tend to sing?
I wouldn't say messed up. I'm seriously not good enough to play jazz. I'm very middle of the road. Middle of the road, not one extreme or the other. I like whatever's popular. Because of my age, you know, I was a child in the 60s and 70s. So, but I'm quite happy to sing some Ed Sheeran songs. You know, but if I like the sound of it and I can play it, I have that ability, then that's where I'll perform.
Perfect. So maybe one day on YouTube, on your channel, you'll be singing a couple of songs. Huh?
Oh, if you search hard enough, you find sometimes on my English language channels, because of copyright, you can't use certain music. So if ever I'm teaching something, and I know you're kind enough to have watched some of my YouTube videos, and a lot of them are real life conversations that I set up. So if I need someone watching the TV, that will be me performing. So you get, without the beard, you get me and a guitar actually singing. So I do appear on my own videos sometimes in the background.
Okay, wow. Well, everybody have an eager eye out to see next time you're watching one of Steve's videos. Like, it's him singing. Wow, he's got such a beautiful voice. He sounds like Adele.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Lewis. I sound just like Adele.
You're welcome anytime. Anytime. Now, anyway, before we finish off, tell me about you and teaching English. How was it that you got into it? Obviously, you retired when you were 49, then you took up photography, then you kind of decided to pack it in. So was it just after that that you thought, I could be an English teacher?
It was COVID. When COVID happened, is that 3 or 4 years ago now? Time goes so fast. But in the
Time
UK,
flies,
we had strict lockdown, which meant we weren't literally allowed to go outside the door. And I was bored. You know, I'm quite an outgoing person. I'm gregarious, little advanced word. You know, I like meeting people. I like talking. And I was bored, and a friend of mine was teaching English online for a company, and suggested that I might like to do that. And I took to it like a duck to water.
To take to something like a duck to water is to kind of adapt to something very well, to be very happy and successful at doing something new, essentially. You take
Brilliant.
to something like a duck to water because ducks are happiest when they are in water. So they take to something like a duck to water.
You are very good at this.
I'm just winging it, improvising, you know. But if anyone has any questions, any doubts about the vocabulary and expressions that we're using in this conversation, feel free to write a comment in, in the comments, and we'd be more than happy to resolve or clear up any doubts that you might have.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So I tried working for this agency, and it's amazing. It opened up the world to me. One day I'd be, not even in one day I could speak to people from China, Japan, from Brazil. It was amazing to me. And then I became conscious that not everyone could afford this type of lesson. So I decided to start a YouTube channel so that everyone could basically learn English for free. And it's become reasonably popular. It's only 18 months old, but it's getting there. I enjoy making the videos. To be honest, I really like helping.
And what is the kind of creative process for you? Like, how do you think of new videos, get to recording them, editing them? How do you go through the motions, so to speak?
First of all is the idea. I'm quite creative, so I like writing stories. So I have some of my videos are story videos. I'll come up with an original idea. I'll pack it full of words and phrases that I think would be useful. And then I write a story. Some of the most popular videos are these conversations where I might be at a bus stop and someone will ask me when the next bus is due. Or I might be in the kitchen washing dishes and asking, what are we going to eat? So I write the script first, and that usually takes me a day. Then I'll record it, and I record almost all the videos here. This camera, this background, but because of digital technology, I can take the background away and be at a football ground if I want.
Or at Tombstone, Arizona.
That should be the next one. Tombstone, Arizona. Just for you. I'll do one on Tombstone, Arizona, riding a horse.
Exactly.
And then I record it. That doesn't take me very long to record it. I've not got a very good memory. So I don't know how you do yours, but I have an iPad that's right in front of me with the script written out, and I freeze like this. So I'll go, and on today's, we are going to learn about, and I just cut them all up. So if you look closely, you'll actually see me jump a little bit, but that's why I wave my hand so much so you can't see the join. Then I edit them. That takes the longest. When I started 18 months ago, 1 minute took me 1 hour to edit.
It's a lot
so
of
if it was
work.
10 minutes video, it would take me 10 hours. That's reduced a lot now, but it still takes a long time to do. And then it's a question. I also do guidebooks for each of the videos now as well. So then I'll write a guidebook that gets attached and it's uploaded.
I mean, it's a lot of work. People maybe sometimes don't realize how much work goes into all of the videos that we make behind the scenes. Like, that's one of the reasons why I make these conversations, because, of course, I have a full-time job, lots of classes, lots of things going on. I have to kind of balance lots of stuff at the same time. So then spending a day, 2 days making a YouTube video sometimes isn't an option. And that's the reason why I think it's interesting to have like podcasts, because I'm a big listener of podcasts myself. But yeah, making YouTube videos, it's no joke. Like, it's a lot of hard graft.
It's nice use of graft. It's not for the faint-hearted.
You have to be very brave. You have to be able to take on the risk and all of the work. So yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah. And sometimes you feel like when you start, it's like just shouting into an empty room and hoping someone's there. Do you know, my first video got, I think, 70 views. And it was like, it's taking me 5 days. 5 days of hard work for 70 people. Fortunately, I got a few more than that now.
Thank God, right? Now, let's finish with the last question. Tell me, what are your plans for the next few months? Have you got any trips booked? Are you going to make lots of new videos? Maybe take some photos? Yeah, what have you got planned around the corner?
Well, New Year's just happened. And so I made a New Year resolution to become more organised. This last 18 months has very much been what shall I do today? Oh, I know, let me do this. Oh, let me do that. And it's not the most efficient way of working. So I've undertaken to create at least one video every 3 days. So that's my undertaking. I've decided to really push YouTube to get them videos out there and help people if I can. In terms of trips, I have my dad's 98 years old, so it's any spare time really is a trip to go and see him and make sure he's all right. No holidays booked this year so far. I'm going, I think, next week to give a lecture at university on business English. So that's in Turkey, in a city called Izmir. I teach a professor who teaches at the university, invites me to give a guest lecture, and I am shaking in my boots.
You're panicking. You're a bit nervous. I mean, you're a neutral. Everything will go fine. It'll go perfectly. It'll go swimmingly, I'm sure.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Everybody, fingers crossed for Steve. And Steve, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. A very nice little chit chat, getting to know you and allowing everybody else to get to know a little bit more about you. And I look forward to watching the real life conversation based in Tombstone, Arizona. I can't wait.
It's been an absolute delight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. And let us know in the comments if anything is unclear, and we'd be happy to clear up those doubts. Thanks again, Steve, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.